Hey, it's the Odd Man. Hey, it's the Odd Man.
Hey, it's the Odd Man. In winter of 2023, I made a long trip down to see the desert in the southwest of the USA. I headed south on a trip that was kind of like this, and then I headed north back this way, as I usually do, of course. I did tons of exercise. I did 4 decent bike rides. I did 8 runs. I did 7 hikes, if you include walking through the Carlsbad Caverns and the paved south rim of the Grand Canyon. Did a couple of four-wheel drive drives, each for about 10 miles. I did some car tours. I saw 12 different National Park Service properties.
So I spent almost a month touring all the desert places I could find. Tons of national parks, tons of desert, tons of rocks. I had a pretty good time.
Of course, you can imagine that a trip like this involved tons of driving. I drove a total of over 6,200 miles. Figured I'd probably put 125 hours or something in the driver's seat. I spent almost $1,700 on gas.
David spent the morning going through the labs.
I even ran across one road that was named after me.
One of the characteristics of these parks is that most of them are huge. Death Valley must be 130 miles from end to end. Big Bend had 120 miles of border with Mexico. Joshua Tree and Mojave were huge.
You can see here that Canyonlands National Park isn't all that big compared to these others, but it's 40 miles north to south. White Sands is one of the most unique places I saw, and even it was 8 miles between those 2 red lines across the dunes.
To give you an idea of the size of Death Valley, this valley in front of us is where Panamint Springs was. The Badwater Basin is on the other side of those mountains. It was kind of weird because on the one hand there's so much to cover that you think you'll never be able to see it, but on the other hand you go, it's just desert. I've seen enough of that. One of the other characteristics of these parks is that it is always windy. Death Valley wasn't as bad, but man, some of the other ones, you'd get up in the morning, you'd go to bed at night, and the wind was 20 miles an hour, so it was always windy in these places. Well, there's good news, there's bad news. The good news is there's no bugs. The bad news, of course, is the wind is just howling through here. The wind's blowing pretty hard. And it's still really early in the morning. It's like 8:45 maybe, and it's supposed to get a lot windier this afternoon. The restroom was exceptionally windy up your bum. That got old, I can tell you. But I did get pretty good at setting my tent up, hanging onto it, flapping in the breeze.
One night I slept in the car because setting the tent up in the wind that was expected wasn't going to make sense. But other than that, the wind didn't really slow me down much. However, I didn't really spend any time in Canyonlands because it snowed there, and there was so much snow on the ground in the Grand Canyon that all I did was the paved rim trail that had been cleared.
One of the things about all these national parks, national monuments, preserves, whatever, seemed like every time I turned around, my comment was just, wow. So many of these places just have spectacular views. The landscape is amazing. Some of the features are cool. It's sort of been one wonder after another one. I've really enjoyed it. You can probably tell that I love the national parks, the national park system. I bought one of those passes and more than earned back the cost of that baby just on this trip. The property is just spectacular. I was surprised that the facilities weren't as uniform. One of the things I like about state parks is they always have showers. And it kind of seems like that's true no matter what state you're in. The national park system often didn't have much in the way of facilities.
Big Bend didn't have any showers at all, at least in Rio Grande Village. And the Grand Canyon, the showers were closed at the wintertime.
I was surprised by the backcountry camping a little bit. These parks are huge and they allow a lot of backcountry dispersed camping that isn't common. It was kind of odd trying to figure out what the deal was because, like in Big Bend National Park, there were specific campsites and they were backcountry primitive. There was nothing there but a bear box, and you were only allowed to camp in those campsites, and they took reservations for those. The only places in Big Bend you could camp were at the backcountry sites. The Mojave, you were allowed to camp pretty much anywhere.
But I think most of my confusion and most of the differences were related to the types of properties they were. The Park Service has a ton of different designations. So this video covers the general items of the trip, and in subsequent videos I'll cover a whole bunch of the specific places I was. Thanks for watching. This is the Odd Man, out.